Hi, Speechies, it's Sarah, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about the SOS feeding approach, and it's feeding therapy. And it's something that I actually don't have a ton of experience in. I only did in grad school at my clinical placement, but it was something that came up recently when I was talking to a mom. Actually, it's the woman that cuts my hair, and she was telling me about her daughter and her refusal to eat various different foods. And so there is a method, and there's this feeding therapy. It's called like I said, SOS Feeding Therapy. I would Google that if you can want to get more information. And I really enjoyed learning about that approach when I was in graduate school. And I just want to make sure you know I'm not an expert, I'm not certified, I'm not trained in SOS, but it intrigues me both as a parent and an SLP. So, first of all, there is a difference between a picky eater and a problem feeder. So, we're talking about kids that, like, for example, my youngest son really hates all cooked vegetables, but he will accept many of them raw. So, that is great. We don't have to have cooked vegetables. For example, he doesn't like sauteed peppers, but he likes raw peppers and he likes raw carrots, for example. So, he eats a lot of that. That might be thought of as picky. Problem feeders means the child has an extremely restricted number of foods that they eat. So you could potentially write out a list and it's very small. That is a concern because you need to get your adequate nutrition for optimal development. The SOS approach is unique because they do it in a group. So it's a group of kids that have been identified as having more than just your run-of-the-mill picky eating. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I want to share what I saw when I was in graduate school. And it was a group of young kids, early elementary school, and they would sit with two therapists. And the SOS approach is interesting because you can do it as a speech pathologist, but you can also get certified as an OT, a dietitian. There's a whole list of people that could get certified, potentially even a social worker. You can check that out on their website, which I will link to right here. And what I really liked about it is that they have kids explore food in a way that's non-threatening. Because as a parent, let's say you offer a food and the kid refuses to eat it, it can turn into a power struggle. And if you are a parent, there's a feeling of rejection when your kid won't eat the food that you make. And that leads to parents potentially spending even more time preparing food that they know the kid will eat, and they're just spending so much time getting something in front of their child to eat, and it makes parents anxious. It makes kids anxious. And we want to limit that kind of anxiety and stress and power struggles over food. We want mealtime to be just really enjoyable and fun for kids. So in the SOS approach, they kind of view food in different like rainbow colors. So what I observed was a plate of white foods. So I think they had a string cheese. I think they had a jicama. They might have had a white corn chip, and they had the students look at the foods, and some might have been preferred and some might have been not preferred, but what they had to do was kind of look at the food. Now, if the student said, I don't want to touch the cheese, let's say, for example, they were encouraged to use a napkin and pick it up and put it on their plate. So they didn't necessarily have to touch it. This would be noted down that the child was able to touch cheese with a napkin. Everybody had to take one of the foods, and they didn't have to eat it. They didn't have to touch it with a body part. They did have to either touch it with a fork or a napkin. The next part was really over time desensitizing the student to the food. So they tried to get the student to play with it. They had fun with the mealtime, and the student was free to not touch it, not interact with the food. But it was also really good for them, other students, to see that the kids were interacting with the food. So for example, if you like cheese, but the other student doesn't like cheese, you'll eat the cheese and the other student will see, oh, wow, that student is eating the cheese. So maybe it's not so bad. But this kind of therapy goes on over weeks. And it's all about making sure that the child kind of really starts to feel more comfortable with things that maybe they didn't like before. And so they'll take potential. I'll be like, who can play with this? They'll try to maybe put the cheese on your head, put the cheese on your nose, and then getting to a point where see if you can take a little mousy nibble kind of thing, and then spit it out. You don't have to eat it. And so they move to maybe trying to take a bite and see what you think. Like this would happen over weeks. So you get them closer little by little. And I just really love that approach because it really was non-threatening, no power struggle. And if the kid did not want to interact with any of that things that they normally didn't like over time, they didn't have to. But I think it just gets them in a much different like mental state so that they're kind of enjoying the experience. Like I said, I'm not an expert, I'm not trained, but I find it fascinating that there's an approach to help kids who really need that help exploring food in a way that's non-threatening. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next video.